Arsenal linked with another defender. Still no sign of that third attacking signing. The third kit has been officially launched. Noni Madueke is to return early, and Arsenal are back in action on Wednesday at Emirates Stadium. We're going to discuss all of that and lots more on today's episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. Hey everybody, how we doing? Happy Monday and welcome back to another live episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Delighted to be back with you all. Start of a pretty important week, I would argue, in terms of Arsenal's preparations for the new season. We take on Villarreal at the Emirates on Wednesday, and we follow that up with a game on Saturday against Athletic Bilbao. And the hope is that you're going to start to see some more Arsenal-like performances, that some of our signings that have come into the club are going to be able to kind of show that in the last couple of weeks they've made progress in terms of, embedding within the group and getting an understanding and a real feel for what we're doing. In the case of Victor Gyökeres, you're hoping that you're going to see a fitter, sharper Victor Gyökeres who's able to participate in more of the game. Of course, Noni Madueke, we're going to talk about him in a bit as well, because he has returned to training early, has been working one-on-one with his fitness coach to make sure that when he comes back into the picture and comes back into the fold, and we believe that everybody's reporting into training at London Colney today at some point, he'll be ready to make an impression, ready to hit the ground running. So, yeah, it's a big week for the Gunners. It really, really is. I know that, there's been quite the reaction, hasn't there, to some of the preseason performances. Things seem to get a little bit stronger in terms of the criticism and the concerns post the Tottenham game. And that was in part because it was Tottenham, as we've already discussed and covered off on the podcast. But it was also in part to do with the fact that a lot of the issues that we saw, a lot of the troubles that we felt that the team were experiencing were very similar to those that many people would argue ultimately saw us fall short last season. Now, I don't put it down just to that. I think injuries were problematic. I think refereeing decisions were problematic. And I think the truth is we never really ever had the rub of the green at any point last season. However, there were things that we could improve on. There were things that weren't quite right, that were certainly within our sort of remit of control. So we need to improve and we need to be better. And again, you shouldn't overreact to a preseason game. I was probably guilty a little bit of sort of really kind of, highlighting and sort of maybe at times overanalyzing some of the troubles we experienced against Spurs on, when was it, Thursday. But at the same time, it all stems from a desperation to see Arsenal succeed. And that's where we're at now. We all appreciate and acknowledge that we've been moving in the right direction. And we all appreciate and acknowledge that the club is in a much better position, on a much stronger footing than it was 6-7 years ago. But now it's time to take that next step. And a club as big as Arsenal should always be in the mix for the game's biggest honours and trophies. There's no guarantees. You can't guarantee you're going to win this or guarantee you're going to win that. But, we've got to be there or thereabouts. And that's what we're all, of course, hoping for in the new season. Right, let's start off by discussing Arsenal's third kit that was officially launched today. Apologies if you can hear my husky howling. I don't know what's gotten into her this morning, but she has not stopped howling. There's all sorts of reasons why huskies howl, but I can't quite put my finger on why she's doing it today. But hey, she's been fed, she's been taken out, she's had it all today. I don't understand. Anyway, right, forget about that. Let's get into the Arsenal third kit launch. What do we think of it? Well, for those of you watching us on YouTube, I'm on the arsenal.com website, so you guys can get a look at it. Look, for me, normally, I'm anti-white Arsenal kits because I think they remind me of a certain other club just a few miles down the road. And I always say that I'm very much a traditionalist when it comes to the Arsenal kits, right? So I want red and white, obviously, for the home kit. For me, the away kit should always be a yellow shirt with blue shorts and either yellow or blue socks. And then I'm not too fussed normally about the third kit, but there's something about white that it doesn't work for me in the Arsenal sense, okay? There are exceptions to my sort of rules that I've made up in my own head that I'm not going to veer away from. So I don't mind are sometimes kind of breaking that mold. Like I really liked the black and gold away kit that we had a few years ago. It's fine. Look, I love some of the features on this kit, even if I don't love the overall concept. I don't like the collar. Let me put that out there. I don't like collars. I feel like we're playing in the 1930s again when we got collars like that. I love the choice of Adidas logo, the kind of old school one. I really like the sort of old sort of Arsenal Highbury logo that they're utilizing in that bit of artwork there on the club's website. I love just the cannon. So there's a lot of things that I really kind of like about it. If we click into the link as well, this is the official page for the new 25-26 third kit. There's lots of different pictures. There's Alessia Russo, Bukayo Saka. Love the detail here, which is, of course, apparently a sort of tribute to the old Highbury Stadium and the art decor that we found in the East Stand back in the day. So I love that. Here's a little video. I can't play it, obviously, for copyright reasons, but this is what Arsenal say about the kit. It's a tribute to the timeless style and football heritage of the club. The new 25-26 third kit celebrates the essence of classic football design, drawing inspiration from Highbury to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Arsenal's historic final season at the iconic club stadium. Shirt features graphics and detailing that echo its distinctive Art Deco architecture. The 25-26 third kit and Terrace Icons collection is available now at Arsenal Direct and in store. So I like the idea behind it. As I say, I like some of the features. Like I like the details and the design, but a white Arsenal kit for me is a no-go, and a collar in 2025 like that is a no-go as well. So I'm still going to buy it because that's what I do. But I'm not as enthusiastic about it as some people. I'm not sure I like the away one too much this season either, but I really like the home one. So maybe I'm just being grumpy and old, and I'm not as excited by kits as I used to be. I mean, like my kid, right? My son, he's obsessed with the kits. Like whenever he'll ask me, he'll say, "Dad, when are we next playing?" Like the other week, last week, he said, "Dad, when are we playing?" I said, "Thursday." And he said, "Who are we playing against?" I said, "Tottenham." He said, "Okay." And when the game finished, because obviously I was doing a watch along here on the channel, I didn't watch the game with my son. And the first thing he said was not, "Dad, what was the score?" It was, "Dad, what kit did we wear?" Like that just kind of highlights how like interested he is and that generation are in the kits. So I can understand why the club go big on these things and really put a lot of time and effort into it and do these big announcements and stuff. But for me, I just want to see Arsenal win. I just want to see Arsenal be successful. And whatever shirt they're wearing, whether I like it initially or not, if they win in it, it will become iconic, and it will certainly have a place in my heart as a result of that. So yeah, that's where I'm at on the kit. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk Noni Madueke, shall we? Because he has apparently cut his holiday short in order to make sure that he's up to speed going into the new season. Now, I'd imagine that Noni Madueke, fitness-wise, can't be too far off of it. And I say that because the Club World Cup didn't finish that long ago. And yes, he would have taken some time off, but we understand, or I say we understand, I'm going by other people's reports to be clear. He has returned from his holiday early. He spent some time working with a fitness coach in order to ensure that when everybody reports to London Colney today at some point, whatever time that will be, he's ready to kind of make an impression and hit the ground running. And listen, I'll be the first to admit that when I first heard of the Noni Madueke signing, I wasn't sure. I was questioning whether that was the best spend, the best way of utilizing the funds. When you looked at the situation at the time, we still didn't have our striker in through the door yet. Here we were going and spending big money on a winger that I think it's fair to say divides opinion. The more I watch Arsenal in pre-season, and again, you can't read into pre-season too much, the more I think we are missing exactly what Noni Madueke is. And perhaps having taken the time to educate myself a little bit more around what exactly Noni Madueke's skill set is and, what he would bring to the table, I think I'm certainly more positive about the idea than I was a few weeks ago. But for me, the jury's still out. Let's be honest. Noni Madueke is going to come into this Arsenal team under quite a bit of pressure because there were a lot of people that disagreed very, very strongly, by the way, with the signing. There were people at the time saying, I've never seen a club's fan base react so negatively to the prospect of someone coming in. So Noni Madueke would have got wind of that, would have experienced that. And as I said at the time, he can either use that in one of two ways, right? You either look at that and you allow it to completely swallow you up, and you allow it to kind of get into your mindset, get into your mentality, and all of a sudden you feel like you can't express yourself and play your game because you are so fearful of the scrutiny that you're going to come under and the pressure is weighing you down. Or you can show a really kind of strong mentality and say, you know what, fine, you will think that I'm a bit of a joke. Not all of you, but a lot of you think that this is a bit of a joke signing. A lot of you can't understand why the club have invested what they have in me. They clearly believe in me, and they believe in me for a reason. I'm a £50 million player. I'm going to turn up here and I'm going to show you all that you were wrong. And I'm going to prove to every single one of you that I can be a really valuable asset to this team. And we did an unpopular opinions podcast on Sunday, which you can go back and check out. It's the last video on the channel. It's the last podcast in your feeds. What we did was we went onto social media and I asked for Arsenal fans to send me their most unpopular Arsenal opinions going into the new season. Many people sent me all sorts of things, and we ran through them. And I thought it was a nice change in the format, if you like, and it's available now. As I say, go and check it out. But one of the questions that came up was about Noni Madueke, and the question was, could Noni Madueke end up being our most sort of effective attacking signing this summer? And while I don't think that would be the case, I think it'll probably be Victor Gyökeres. I think if we end up with Eberechi Eze as well, then you could argue that he would take on that kind of title, if you like. But it's not a wild suggestion, because the more, as I say, you watch Madueke clips, compilations, the more you dig into the numbers, and I'm not always a stats first guy, but the more you dig into that stuff, the more you analyze him, the more it does make sense as to why Arsenal signed him. So let's hope that he can come in, that he can hit the ground running, because if he can hit the ground running, then football fans, myself included, I'm not having a go at other people, myself included, it can be very, very fickle. And you can go from being unsure and a little bit maybe skeptical about a player to thinking, wow, what a fantastic signing, and really kind of buying in and really kind of getting invested and on board with what they bring to the team. So, Noni Madueke coming in and hitting the ground running would make the world of difference. I think he's realized that. I think he knows that he's got a job on his hands to break into this team, because obviously his preferred position on that right flank is a position occupied by Bukayo Saka currently, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. He will be eyeing up a position on the left, I think. He'll be looking at Martinelli, who's not quite been at his best over the course of the last 12, 18 months. He'll be looking at Leandro Trossard, who there are also question marks over, if we're being honest. He'll be looking at the fact that Arsenal's left-hand side on the whole isn't quite functioning in the way it should. And he'll think, maybe there's a spot there for me. And perhaps the conversation between him and Mikel and Andrea Berta involved sort of that left-hand side as kind of maybe more of a focus point than we would have thought. Because I think when you play the way we do, and we are right-sided heavy, and we are a little bit lopsided as a team, your left winger has to be someone that is capable of playing in isolation, but still making things happen. Martinelli, for me, can run brilliantly, can attack spaces brilliantly, but maybe doesn't have the trickery and guile to beat people and to commit defenders. Leandro Trossard, I would argue, has a bit more of the technical side, but probably doesn't have the pace that Gabriel Martinelli does. And obviously Trossard, I think, does his best work when he drifts inside. Whereas Noni Madueke, he could stay high and wide. He can beat a man. He's more than happy, I think, to go on the outside with that left foot if he's playing on the left, which is something that none of Martinelli and Trossard particularly offer us. So I think Madueke could bring us something very, very different on that left-hand side. Now, am I saying that he's definitely going to walk into that position, take it and make it his own? No, but I think he'll be looking at the situation and he'll probably feel like he's best chance of breaking into the starting 11 will be on that left flank rather than on the right, which is where a lot of people assumed he'd be utilized when he first came in. Do you remember the narrative was kind of like, well, he's going to come in and he's going to be Saka backup. And in part, that was why people were going, well, why have we spent 50 million quid on this guy if he's going to be Saka backup? But over time, people have started to think about the different options that we have available to us. I don't think the performances of Trossard and Martinelli, albeit pre-season, have filled anybody with much confidence about them sort of upping the level next season. And that has sparked the conversation about Noni Madueke on the left. And actually, when I looked into this, I didn't realize that Noni Madueke had played as much football as he has on that left-hand side for Chelsea in recent months. Maybe that's what Arsenal saw. Maybe that's what Arsenal are looking at. Who knows? But anyway, Noni Madueke back, has been training on an individual level and will be a part of the squad, hopefully, for these games against Villarreal and Athletic Bilbao, even though, he's still very much in the first few days of his Arsenal career. But yeah, let's move on. Arsenal have been linked with yet another defender. Surprise, surprise. We understand that Arsenal have already made an approach for Jeremy Jacquet, a new defender, a player that currently plays his football for Rennes over in France. And this is being done in case of an exit involving Alexander Zinchenko or Jakub Kiwior. Now, Rennes say that the defender is not for sale. They extended his contract back in May, but Fabrizio Romano says that Arsenal remain keen on the player, and this could be one for 2026. Now, the first thing that people are going to say when they hear this is another defender. How many defenders is Mikel Arteta going to bring into the club? Look, we are losing defenders, right? We've lost Tierney, we've lost Tomiyasu. We could lose Zinchenko as well, who might not be a natural defender, but certainly goes down as a left-back option, doesn't he, if you're sort of doing a bit of a squad analysis. Look, this young man, Jeremy Jacquet, I think that's how you say it, 20 years old, exciting prospect. And I saw him described online yesterday as one of the, and I'll quote, and I'll just read this quote, one of the most exciting prospects in French football. And now considering that it's a conveyor belt of super talented stars over in France, that's pretty big as far as compliments go, isn't it? So there is a part of me that looks at it and goes, interesting. But then I sort of looked into the player a little bit, and very, very top level stuff, because he's not someone that it was on my radar previously. And until it feels like this is moving in a certain direction, I don't really think we need to spend too much time sort of analyzing the ins and outs of the player. It feels like this is one more so for 2026. But he's played just 12 times for the first team. Now, that doesn't mean he's not a good player. You know, Max Daumann is someone who's just broken into the Arsenal squad. Has, of course, I know he's younger, but has, of course, only performed or only played for the Arsenal first team in pre-season friendlies so far. But the point I'm making is that everybody knows Max Daumann's a good player. So just because Jacquet hasn't played that much football for Rennes yet, it doesn't mean he's not an exciting prospect. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be interested in him. I think he's got a lot to offer based on what I'm reading. But this would be one for the future. This would be Arsenal kind of just trying to find that balance, I think, between recruiting for the here and now, but also recruiting for sort of sustainable success. But with Mosquera coming in and Kiwior having impressed the way he has, I can't really see how this will be a priority for now, even if Zinchenko leaves. Some people have said, well, this could be a sign that Jakub Kiwior's leaving. Jakub Kiwior's really grown on me. I got to be honest, the jury was out on him for me for quite some time. But towards the back end of last season, I thought he did a fantastic job stepping in for Big Gabby at the real kind of business end of the season. I really, really enjoyed his performances. I think he's going to play a significant role again this season. I think he'll be the first in the kind of defensive rotation that we might see from Mikel to try and protect our two prized assets at centre-back if he can. I don't want Kiwior to leave for us to then go and bring in a 20-year-old unproven defender. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but some people are saying, well, Jacquet being looked at means that Kivior's going. Unless someone comes in with a crazy amount of money, I'm not selling Jakub Kivior now. We need him. He's probably going to start the season at centre-back for Arsenal. Gabriel might not make it in time. Ricardo Calafiori is repeatedly suffering with injury problems at the moment, and that's a worry and a concern. But Kivior is the guy. Like, even if Calafiori was fit and available going into the season, first game at Old Trafford, I would have 100% picked Jakub Kivior in the event that Gabriel's not ready, ahead of Calafiori any day. So he's at that place in the pecking order for me now where he's too important to just let go. Only if there's a crazy offer, the player's really pushing for it, would I be open to that possibility. But for now, I want to keep hold of him. Jacquet, maybe one for the future, maybe one we see Arsenal sign and loan back, maybe one that we see Arsenal sort of move more seriously for next summer. But there's always that danger, isn't there? If you think this player is the guy and you think he can come in and help, and you let him play for another season without doing the deal first, then there is the risk that he improves, he plays really well, he catches the attention of many, many clubs around the continent, and then you end up with a bit of a bidding war and a bit of a problem in terms of trying to keep the cost down of the signing. So, yeah, let's keep an eye on that one, but it's not imminent as far as we're aware at the moment. Right, short pause. When we come back, we're going to talk strikers a little bit more. We're going to talk Eberechi Eze too. And we're going to take some of your questions from the live chat. Don't go anywhere. You are listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner.
You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner. Like and subscribe.
That's right. You're listening to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Yeah, brilliant to have so many of you with us. Thank you so much for joining us on this live episode. Remember, if you haven't done so already, leave a like on the video. It really, really does help. And make sure that you are subscribed to the channel as well. Turn on the little bell. That way you'll never miss a notification. If you are listening to us on Apple, please do leave us a review. Same with if you're listening to us on Spotify. I really, really appreciate all the support. Let's move on to our next story. Okay, let's talk strikers. Now, look, we've got our man in through the door, but the Benjamin Cesco to Man United or Newcastle thing has got me quite interested because, we liked him, right? We liked him. I liked him. Not as much as I liked Victor Gyökeres. I have to make that point. It's really important. I've had a lot of people coming up to me online. Well, I say coming up to me, like commenting on stuff that I've done online and saying, oh, well, you're in the mud now because Arsenal got Gyökeres. Clearly never listened to a word that I'd said in the past, where I made it very, very, very clear who I thought the better option was, and it wasn't Benjamin Cesco. But anyway, I was really sort of annoyed actually by some of the reported demands that were coming out of his camp. Now they are reported, and you've got to sometimes take this stuff with a pinch of salt because ultimately we don't really know. But I didn't like some of the things we were hearing, right? I didn't like the idea of Arsenal paying towards 90 million euros to sign him. I didn't like the idea of him demanding a crazy salary. I didn't like the reports that claimed he was looking for a release clause to be inserted in his deal. There was a lot of stuff around that whole Benjamin Cesco conversation that I personally, not that it matters that much, but just in terms of my views, felt uncomfortable with. Man United have repeatedly overpaid for players, and that is ultimately, for me, what has put them in the position they are in today. Okay, overpaying, overcommitting. There is a bit of a Man United tax because they've done that for such a long time now. Clubs are going to try, by any means necessary, essentially, to take United to the cleaners each and every time they show an interest in one of their players. But over the weekend, interestingly, Newcastle made an official offer to RB Leipzig worth 75 million euros plus 5 million euros in add-ons, so to the total of 80 million euros. And as far as we're aware, that has been rejected. And that offer, the report of the offer, came from David Ornstein. Now, Man United, I mentioned them because they're still in the mix for Benjamin Cesco, and I believe remain the most likely destination for the Slovenian. But I stick by what I've previously said. The money RB Leipzig are demanding for this player is crazy. Look, he could go on to develop into something special. I've always maintained that. But they are packaging this guy up, as are his representatives, as if he's peak Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And that, for me, if I were Newcastle, would put me off. But the reason I bring this up is because it also involves, I think, another player that Arsenal fans were very much interested in, that Arsenal were interested in, if we're sort of to believe the reports. It also affects Alexander Isak's future, doesn't it? Because for Newcastle United to be making an offer of that kind of money, it suggests to me that they would be open to selling Alexander Isak if Liverpool met their demands, if Liverpool upped their offer. Now, I know that people will push back on that and say, yeah, but hold on, Newcastle offered for Ekitike before Liverpool came in and unsettled Alexander Isak. First of all, they weren't going to pay, or their offer wasn't close to what this offer is for Benjamin Cesco. That's why it got rejected by Eintracht Frankfurt out of hand. And in the end, Liverpool have paid quite a bit more for Ekitike than Newcastle, I beg your pardon, were ever even able to. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a bit of a kind of mess, hasn't it? Isak wanting out, that's been clear. Newcastle saying sort of not for sale. Apparently, they rebuffed that approach from Liverpool quite strongly. That led to then Liverpool sort of briefing people saying, well, we're not going back in for the player. A lot of us at the time thought maybe that's a bit of a negotiation tactic more than anything else, and believed that probably Liverpool would still go back in. This, for me, this massive, major, mega offer that Newcastle have just made for Benjamin Cesco, it shows you that Newcastle are willing to part ways with Alexander Isak, despite what they say, as long as the price is right. And so it's on Liverpool now to go and sort of come up and put together a package that will satisfy Newcastle, because I can't see how you can hold on to Alexander Isak if you're Newcastle. He don't want to play for you. Okay, he's returned to the UK and he's returned to training and all the rest of it. But if he doesn't want to play for you, how focused is he going to be? If he doesn't perform to the levels that we've come to expect over the past couple of seasons because he's not focused, if Newcastle struggle because, they're in the Champions League again and they've got to juggle that with domestic football, which is something they've struggled with in the past. They were hoping to build out and flesh out the squad in order to cope with that, and they haven't been particularly successful in doing that so far. If they struggle, he struggles, the focus isn't there, and people are starting to kind of paint a bit of a negative picture of Alexander Isak. There he is trying to force a move, doesn't want to train, wasn't really interested in the summer activities. And then he starts the season and looks a little bit disinterested, which can happen when you're not fully focused. At the elite level, these things show. Then I think his value takes quite the slide and quite the beating, actually. In which case, Newcastle might agree to sell him next summer, but then you're not getting close to the 130, 140, maybe even 150 million pounds total package that we keep hearing about. So if you're Newcastle, you need to move him on this summer, I believe. Okay, you're going to drag it out for as long as you can to try and squeeze the maximum amount of Liverpool. I get that and I understand that. But I think you've got to move him on this summer. And I think Newcastle's move for Benjamin Cesco, even though they probably won't land him and he probably ends up at Man United, is the strongest indication yet that despite what they say publicly, they are open to Alexander Isak leaving because he's made it abundantly clear he wants to. They probably have concerns about all of the things I've just mentioned. How focused will he be? What will his value look like next summer if they hold on to him and he doesn't perform, which could quite possibly happen. He's got a patchy injury record as well. So if he was to get an injury that saw him out for a while, that could also have a big impact too. I think they have to let him go this summer, but they're right to try and get as much money as they possibly can. But the Cesco thing, whether he lands at Man United or whether he lands at Newcastle, I'm going to be sitting here saying the exact same thing. I think at this time, and listen, he might go on to be brilliant and prove me to look really stupid and really wrong, but I think we dodged a bit of a bullet in the end because this feels like, these negotiations with Cesco, they don't seem to be progressing with anyone. They didn't progress with us. There's no real signs of it progressing too quickly with Man United. And Newcastle have made an offer that I think is more than fair in terms of the player's value, and they've had that rejected. So it might be partly Cesco and his camp, and it's probably partly RB Leipzig. In fact, it's definitely in part RB Leipzig being difficult. But yeah, this just feels like a really, really messy one. But if you read between the lines, I think it does tell us something about what Newcastle's actual intentions are with regards to Alexander Isak. Okay, let's move into our final topic of the day, and then we'll take some of your questions from the live chat. What's going on with Eberechi Eze? Why the delay in Arsenal really kind of formalising their interest in Eberechi Eze? It's one of the most common questions I've been asked over the last couple of weeks. So I just wanted to kind of share with you guys my understanding of the situation at the moment. So Eze is a player of interest to Arsenal. He's a player that they really, really like. He's a player that Mikel Arteta really likes, and he's a player who the squad really like. A lot of the players within our group, within our camp, are familiar with Eberechi Eze because they've spent time with him, worked with him, played with him on international duty. Now, there's a lot of talk about the price. The release clause has been the real kind of subject of discussion around this. Now, we believe the release clause to be somewhere around £68 million in terms of its total value. I beg your pardon, in terms of its total value, okay? It's said that you need to basically pay 60 million guaranteed with 8 or so million in add-ons. We read last week that Crystal Palace would need about 30 or 35 million pounds of that money to be paid up front in order for that release clause to be triggered. Now, that's what we think is the case with regards to this release clause specifically, but there's another detail here that I think is a little bit unclear, and it's regards to the expiration of this release clause. Now, BBC Sport reported a few weeks ago now that the clause would expire 2 weeks before the end of the season. So essentially around about the 1st of August. Now, some of the newspapers have since reported that this release clause, it expires on August the 15th. So we don't actually, well, I don't actually know whether that release clause still exists or whether it has expired. But I think that Arsenal do have a very, very strong interest in this player. But I think having signed 6 players already, and I'm not saying I agree with this before people jump on me, but having signed 6 players already, I think Arsenal are quite comfortable in the knowledge that they've done the bulk of their summer business. And I think as a result of that, if it means they get a deal that's more favorable to them, they are probably quite comfortable with waiting and seeing how this plays out. Are they going to make a big push for Eberechi Eze towards the end of the window? Because as I've told you guys before, Crystal Palace might be talking the talk, but given that Eberechi Eze, if he stays for one more season, will be going into the final year of his contract the next season, it means that they're never going to get that kind of money for him. Now, I know they did something similar with Mark Gay. They put their foot down. They made sure that they didn't lose him, even though people felt that the money being offered by Newcastle at the time was crazy. I think it was upwards of £70 million. I think Crystal Palace as a football club, they just can't keep doing this. That they can't afford to lose out on Mark Gay in terms of getting that really, really big money in for him, and then do the same thing with Eberechi Eze. I don't think Crystal Palace as a football club are able to kind of allow those opportunities to kind of cash in and pass. In terms of the investment, in terms of the value of the player, I beg your pardon, in terms of the overall value of the player, I don't believe that Arsenal and Crystal Palace are that far apart. Like, if Arsenal feel that they got a cracking deal with Noni Madueke, £52 million, how can they feel that Eberechi Eze at 60, £65 million is like ridiculous and way out there? Now, Eberechi Eze is a bit older, of course, but Arsenal have shown a willingness, I think, in the last couple of years to just invest that little bit more in those players that were a little bit older. Now, we know that wasn't something that Edu was particularly big on. Maybe that, in part, and I'm speculating here, led to a bit of a disconnect forming to the point where Edu got up and left because there was another job on the table that he felt was better suited to him. So I don't think we're miles apart in terms of the overall valuation of the player. But I think the problem is for Arsenal right now is that this release clause, if it's still rolling, and again, we're not entirely sure about that because there's conflicting reports. I think Arsenal would prefer to do a deal with a structure that just works a bit better for them in terms of all the other investment that they've made this summer. So from what I was reading Arsenal would be quite happy to put down, like, say, 20, 25 million for Eberechi Eze, but would prefer not to have to put down the 30, 35 that the release clause says. So if the release clause does indeed expire on August the 15th, then that could be why there's a bit of a delay here. That could be why we haven't really seen any progress on this. I don't think it's over yet. I think it's still one that's very much alive. But as I say, I think Arsenal, having done all of this business already, will be quite comfortable in their position, will be quite relaxed about it, and will feel like actually longing this out with the player maybe pushing from his side will lead to us getting the deal that better works and better suits us. And if Arsenal pull that off and Andrea Berta pulls that off, then there'll be lots of praise coming his way again. But yeah, I think the release clause, if it is still in play, it requires a certain payment structure that, as I understand, Arsenal just don't feel completely comfortable with. They will believe that once that release clause expires, whether it has already or if it is expiring in a couple of weeks' time, they will be in a better position to negotiate, in a stronger position to negotiate. They know that the player wants them, and that should, in theory, lead to them getting a much better deal. So that's where we're at on that. Okay, where are we at on likes, by the way, on the video? Before I dive into your questions, start getting your questions in the live chat, by the way. We'll pick up as many of those as we can between now and the end of the show. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you're listening on Apple, leave us a review. If you're listening on Spotify, please do leave us a review there too. You can check us out on Patreon as well. Patreon.com/Chronicles of Laguna. The link is in the description below. You'll get access to our exclusive Patreon content as well as every episode of the pod ad-free. Right, Q&A time. Let's get into it, shall we? Okay, what are you guys saying? I can see that there's a lot of negativity in the chat, and it's a lot to do with sort of people sort of maybe feeling a little bit frustrated about maybe what I've just said regarding Eberechi Eze. I'm just telling you what I believe to be the situation at the moment. Okay, if it were me, I would find a way to raise the funds and I would go and do this deal because, I think he's a fantastic player and I think he would make a big difference to our upcoming campaign. So for me, it's worth it. Bill McClintock says, is the delay with Eze down to Arsenal's cash flow that they need to sell one or two players to cope with this potential transfer? As I've said before, I think it's more to do with squad balance and wages than it is to do with finding a way of meeting the transfer fee. I always feel like huge companies, Arsenal is a big business at the end of the day, whether people want to admit that or not, or like that terminology or phrasing. I think they would be able to come up with something. I think they would be able to meet Crystal Palace's demands if they really wanted to, but I think there are other things that they want to get in order first, and squad balance and salaries are probably two of those things. But yeah, look, maybe Arsenal could do the deal right now under the terms that exist in that release clause, but prefer to wait because they've got reason to believe that they can get it done at cheaper and in a more sort of favorable structure for themselves. And listen, if they sign Eberechi Eze in 2 weeks rather than now, I don't think anybody's going to lose their minds over it. Like, ideally, you'd like to get your players all in and ready to go for the new season, but we know that's not always the case. If it was the case, the window wouldn't run as long as it does. So yeah, let's see what's going to happen. Let's see what's going to happen with that. In fact, hold on. When does the transfer window close? Let's just double check. Yeah, hold on. Just bringing it up, just double checking. Let's just get this. This one's from Sky Sports. It's probably more reliable than that dodgy website that I just found. September the 1st. So there's still plenty of time. It's just under a month to go. Okay, Jojo Rabbit says, so if the release clause expires, Palace could demand more and slap a new price tag on. They could, in theory. However, I made the point earlier that, with him staying for another year, he'd be going into the final year of his contract, and then to go into the final year of his contract, that by default tanks his value. So I think Crystal Palace are smarter than that. So I think Arsenal would have looked at that. Arsenal would have looked at that situation and feel like they can take advantage of it. Sniper Scope says, are you not sick of the penny pinching? Don't see Liverpool doing this. Arteta is on his last chance. I think the I think you meant to say saloon, not salon. He's not cutting people's hair. But look, I think, yeah, look, of course I am. Like, of course I'd rather Arsenal just go out and do the business that we all think is right, and that when they identify a target, they're able to push forward and execute those deals nice and quickly. But, football is far more complex than that. And it isn't just a case of getting the credit card out and bringing the player in. I mean, as I said, it's not just about the figures that you're going to pay transfer fee wise. It's about the salaries, and like, you can't take on a massive commitment without doing your due diligence. And when I say commitment, I mean, if you signed Eberechi Eze on a 4-year deal, let's say, you'd be committing to maybe 200 grand, maybe north of that per week for the next 4 years. It's a big old commitment to make. So I don't necessarily see it as penny pinching. I see it as negotiating. If you end up losing out on the player because you weren't willing to go that far and the demands were reasonable, then I would call it I don't call it penny pinching in this. If it takes you a week or 2 weeks longer that you get the deal you want, I don't regard that as penny pinching. I regard that as negotiation. If you have a situation where the player is wanting to come, he's obviously going to improve your team, he's available at a reasonable price, and you're still trying to squeeze out more in terms of the deal for yourself, then I'll call that penny pinching. Then that's taking the P, essentially. But I don't think that's the case here. Jid says, are you sure that this Eze saga isn't manufactured and it's just fans desperately trying to manifest the move? There haven't even been any club-to-club talks. You say that, Jid, but it has been reported by numerous journalists that club-to-club discussions have taken place. It's never been said that we've gone to the point of, making an official bid. But there's plenty of reports saying that there's been club-to-club contact. Do I think it's been manufactured by the fans? No, I think there's no smoke without fire. I do think there is an interest there, but I do think that it seems a bigger deal because of the fans being essentially desperate to see this happen. So because of the fans being really on board with this, it does add a layer of pressure. And then the more it sort of adds pressure, and the more that it's being discussed, the more it feels like it's likely to happen, the more of a conversation it becomes. I get your point, but the point about there not being any club-to-club talks, that isn't in line with some of the reports that we've had. What else have we got? Just trying to roll through the comments and pick out stuff that isn't quite the same. Bush D says, if the club were run like how some in the live chat would want, it would be bankrupt within a year. Yeah. But listen, we're fans. We're entitled to having our views and sharing our opinions on signings and stuff. And it's not, I mean, ideally, like, you kind of want to try and stay as realistic as possible when it comes to talking about spend. But as fans, you do get into a situation where you just want a player and you're not really that fussed about the finances. That's on the club, isn't it, to figure out those details and essentially get the deals done that will improve the team. Not necessarily the deals that you or I want, because there's loads of players that I've wanted over the years that we weren't even interested in. The biggest and most recent one for me was Kvicha Kvaratskhelia. I know that PSG deal was agreed ahead of time, and I know that it was a difficult one for us to do at that point, but I really felt at the time it was worth pushing the boat out. I really did feel like, he'd be perfect for us on that left-hand side. We've all seen him go to PSG, be brilliant, become a Champions League winner and all the rest of it. Won 2 league titles last season, got a medal for Napoli's Scudetto win, and got himself a medal with PSG as well, having won Ligue 1 as well as the Champions League. So, like, sometimes it happens, right, where you really, really want a player, you really like a player. The club have seemingly no interest, and that frustrates you and disappoints you. I think with the case of Eze, though, I think he's a player that we like as fans, but I think the club also like as well. I'm not going to say it's definitely going to happen, but I would say watch this space in the hope that, that interest does just pick up a little bit and develop into something a little bit stronger. Fuad says, H, do you see the left side as a personnel issue or a tactical issue? I think it's a bit of both. I think it is a bit of both. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but I think that with the right player on the left, the imbalance probably isn't as obvious on the eye as it is now. And I think if it's less obvious on the eye, it means that opposition sides will start to then distribute defensive solutions out to that side of the pitch a little bit more than they do currently, which would mean in turn that our right side would have a bit more space as well. So yeah, let's see. Thierry says, what do you make of Partey's going to Villarreal? I am surprised. I'm surprised that anybody's committed to signing him at this stage, given what's happening. On a 2-year deal as well, is what I read yesterday. He's had the medical as well, apparently, according to David Ornstein's report. Listen, I haven't really got an opinion on it. Like, if Thomas Partey, I'd imagine will probably plead not guilty, in which case he won't feel that he needs to stop playing football at this stage. Listen, I've got my views and opinions on it. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but what did I make of him seemingly signing for Villarreal? I was surprised by it. I'd say that was my reaction to that news when it broke yesterday. So yeah. Imran says, we are entering the 20th season since Arsenal left Highbury. On a sporting front, it's been a shit show, no matter the denials from many in the content creation sphere. I agree that we haven't had anywhere near the level of success that we were promised when we left our home and moved to, at the time, the very shiny, sparkly Emirates Stadium. It's not quite as shiny and sparkly at the moment. I know they've put in new advertising boards this summer, and there's lots of stuff that I love about the Emirates Stadium. But for God's sake, just paint the seats, man. Respray the seats or apply some kind of treatment to get them looking red again. They look washed. They look old. It looks run down. It's patchy because they look different in different parts of the stadium where the sun's been hitting. Like, take some pride in your home is what I would say to Arsenal Football Club on that front, because it winds me up every time I see it. I've also been to many games, and in my section where my season ticket is in the North Bank, right, we stand, and I end up leaning on my seat, and the amount of times that I've come out of the Emirates Stadium and come home and my wife's gone, what is all that red stuff on the back of your jeans? And like, it's taken like 2 or 3 washes in some cases to get it out. It's just because it's just all falling apart. It's horrible. I know that's not what you're referring to. You're talking about things on the sporting side, and I agree. You know, I think Arsenal oversold at the time to us what moving was going to do. Like, I do think we needed to. I do think we were a club that had outgrown Highbury Stadium, and I think we needed to move on. But I think they oversold and overpromised. Maybe at the time they genuinely believed as a football club that move was going to make the difference. But then you had, and this was after Arsenal had started building the Emirates and putting all the pieces in place. Then you had the emergence of Chelsea and their millions. And then you had Man City and their millions. And all of a sudden, actually, where we were going to jump up and close the gap on Manchester United from a revenue perspective, the only club really at the time that we were competing with on a regular basis, all of a sudden the landscape looked very, very different. So that's why I think we didn't see the Emirates move really kind of bring all the things that we hoped it would. But at the same time, you can't excuse the fact that 20 years later we're still waiting for our first Premier League title since moving there. That is, it's undeniable that the move did us no good in that sense. But yeah, and it tied our hands behind our back. Look at all the juggling and the shit that Arsene Wenger had to deal with, and ultimately the miracles he pulled off at times, getting the team into the Champions League with some really crap budgets and having to constantly lose key players to rival clubs. Lorcan, thank you so much, my friend, for your very, very kind donation to the channel. He says, to be honest, Harry, do you think we'll win one of the majors next season? Not asking can we, I'm asking, do you think we will? It's really, really hard, because I can't help but feeling that after last season especially, we got a lot of work to do to get ourselves back to that top tier. I felt like we just fell off last season. And I know I've talked about the reasons for that. And I understand a lot of those reasons. And some of them were within our control, others were not. I'm finding it hard to convince myself that we're going to win the league this upcoming season, just right now. And there's a lot of factors that play into it. I think we haven't done enough in the attacking areas, signing-wise. I think we need another one. And so until we get that, my outlook's going to be slightly pessimistic on that front. I wonder if we've become a little bit predictable, and I want to see something to suggest that we haven't, and I haven't seen that yet. The preseason games haven't got me feeling great, and I know it's only preseason and you shouldn't read into it, but I can only feel what I'm feeling right now. And if you said to me, Harry, bet your house right now on Arsenal winning the Premier League, would you do it? I wouldn't. I'm not saying I should ever really be considering betting my family home on Arsenal's success or not success, but I'm not feeling massively confident that we will. Can we? Yes. But there's a few things that need to change and need to improve for me to really start believing it. I need to look at the opposition. I need to get that feeling. And right now, I don't have it, if I'm being honest with you. I just don't have it at the moment. But we'll see. And that's not me being negative. I said on the pod yesterday that, we should go into the season believing we can challenge. Absolutely. And I do believe we can challenge. But going from second to first is the hardest step you'll ever take. Like some people say, oh, but look, we went from 8th to 4th and then or 8th to 5th and then to 2nd. So surely now it should be easy to go to the top. No, it's the hardest step you'll take. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of signings that we've made this summer that I like. There's a lot that I look at and I'm like, well, I'm not really sure what kind of an impact that's going to have. But I'm open-minded about it, which is the most important thing. I'm not writing people off, but I need to be convinced on some fronts. And right now, if I'm being completely and brutally honest, I'm not. But we'll see. We'll see. Okay, right. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you all so much for joining me on this Monday edition of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. Thank you so much. Really busy old day for me coming up. So I probably won't be back on later, even if there is, unfortunately, any breaking news. Maybe we can do it on the move. But I've got a few jobs the rest of the afternoon and going into this evening as well. If you're interested, I'll be on Talk Sport tonight from 7 to 10 p.m. With the brilliant Ollie Klink. I'm sure we'll be building up to the Premier League season. I'm sure we're going to talk lots of transfers and various other bits and pieces too. So come and join us 7 to 10 p.m. You can watch TalkSport on YouTube. You can watch it on your smart TVs now as well. Or you can listen, of course, on your radios and on DAB via the TalkSport app, website, etc. This one. G Vegan says, hey, Harry, are you paying homage to Arteta with that hairstyle? No, I actually need a haircut. I was going to go this morning, but I called up and they were really busy. And I was like, yeah, I'll leave it till tomorrow then. But no, I'm not paying homage to Mikel Arteta. It's funny because someone actually left a comment on one of the recent episodes going, look at this absolute idiot. He's even copying Mikel Arteta's haircut. He's 40 years old and copying Mikel Arteta's haircut. I don't know what I'm more offended by, the fact that you think I'm copying Mikel Arteta's haircut or the fact that you think I'm 40 when I'm not. I don't know what to be more annoyed about. Not that there's anything wrong with being 40, but I will have my time, and this is not my time. I'm not 40. Anyway, let's see. Lego hair Harry says James in the chat. Right, I'll see you all soon. Until the next one, take care of yourselves. Have a wonderful day up the Arsenal. Goodbye.